Hello, welcome, nice to be here. It's exciting to be here. We haven't done this for some time, and so Roxanne and I enjoy this. We have a lot of fun doing this, and we get a lot of questions. So I'm excited. There's a lot of names that I don't recognize, so please participate with us here. And let me turn this to Roxanne, and you want to explain how we're going to do what we're going to do. She's sitting right over there.
So, hello, you can't see me? Let's first, Jim, see if this is running correctly. Don't touch anything. Yes, okay, good, we're working. You never know with Facebook and technology if it's working or not. So, welcome. I also see a bunch of new names. And how this works is Jim's going to do a little lecture, and then we're going to have question and answer time. And so while he's talking, just type your question into the Facebook live feed there, and I can ask it for you. Also, we want to let you know that we're experimenting with something, and yes, and we're experimenting with something. Sorry, jeez.
You can't think and listen
I
at the same
can't
time.
think and listen at the same time. So we're experimenting with something this time, and what that is we have a coupon code for getting $30 off level one. And so this is only going to be available while we're at this event, and in a moment, I will post that in the feed, what the coupon code is. So take it away, Jim.
Okay. We're saying experimenting because over the years we don't sell Mastering Alchemy. We just simply say, here's what it's all about, and people sign up. But we've decided we're going to kind of try to play with something new. So the purpose of this is to kind of talk about something that's going on. And we titled this Lions and Tigers and Bears, Oh My, from the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy all of a sudden being in a place where she was uncomfortable and uncertain and unaware of what was going on around her. And so it seems to be very apropos for the moment because so many people are having this experience of, I don't know what's happening. And maybe that's you. And so what is happening? And what is happening is really unique to each one of us. So for example, the world is being disruptive is something that I can say to people who are in developing countries. And from one point of view, it's like, wait, coronavirus and supply chain interruptions, and I can't buy my Christmas present. But to other parts of the world, this disruption that they're experiencing has nothing to do with any of that. Their disruption is there is a shift that's going on, and it's interrupting how I live my life. One of the things that's constant in the universe, the only thing constant in the universe is change, and change is driven on waves. So everything plays in waves, in kind of that sine wave that goes up and down, and it's a high and a low, that shift of seasons, summer to winter, night to day, this shifting experience. There's not a lot of newness about this shift in general terms. We go from kind of a state of hands off in terms of politics, for example, and then all of a sudden a period of authoritative nature where people are controlled more so. We're in those swings. But there's another swing, well, actually a couple of swings that are happening, shifts, these waves that we're playing in, that are bigger shifts. There's an 11,200 year cycle that we're now in that we haven't seen for 11,200 years. No relationship to it. There are other patterns that we're in terms of climate change patterns. There's a pattern that runs about every 600 years. There's other patterns. There's patterns that people say, well, this is so weird, climate change, these climate issues. You don't have to look so far back to see that Europe, northern hemisphere, to a great extent, was in a mini ice age from 1640 to 1720. That wasn't so long ago. Pretty significant ice age. All the rivers in Europe were frozen. India had no rain for over virtually a year. No rain, not a drop of rain. So cycles, many things we see, many things we don't see. But there is one cycle here that's very specific to everybody on the planet and the planet. And that's this shifting consciousness that we're playing in. And to a great extent, this shifting consciousness is impacting you very specifically. And we're going to talk about this in a number of ways. Magnetic fields, shifts in the earth, the cycle is beginning to do things to your brain. And one of the things that happens when you begin to have your status quo interrupted is people go into fear. And so this aspect of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, is really something that is very much in the human condition. But if you start to chunk it down to you, how is all of this affecting you? People will say, I'm interrupted, I can't buy my Christmas present, okay? I'm not feeling comfortable, I have anxiety, I have fear, I'm uncertain, I've lost my job. Coronavirus thing, you know, it's really very bad. But everything that's happening is creating a different set of circumstances. But lions and tigers and bears, oh my, seems to be the response that many people choose to go to before they pause to see what is this? How is it unfolding? Where is there value in this? How does it give me an opportunity? Look back at coronavirus, for example. Yes, very challenging. Many people died. A lot of people got sick. And it completely interrupted the entirety of the world in 1 year. You know, a lot of people basically said, wow, I have a moment to think, where I was just going to work every single day and worrying about money. So how does all this affect you? And more importantly, how do you choose to observe and engage with all of this? One of the things about mastering alchemy is it's all about tools, strategies, enhanced abilities. And so when you recognize that there is an alternative to right, wrong, good, bad, I should, I shouldn't, I did it wrong, I'm guilty, blame. You see, all of that is just reactionary responses to what's going on around me. But what if, and many of you understand the what if I was able to step out of that space? Or what if I was able to live in a bubble in such a way that I could observe the world without the world affecting me? Now, that's a useful concept when it gets translated into how many of you are empathetic, how many of you read, psychically I'm going to use, the world from your second chakra. I feel the world, clairsentience. And I feel that person's pain, I feel that person's judgment, I feel that person's worry. It's really disrupting to me feeling the world. Well, what if you could basically observe the world, understand what that person's going through, and at the same time not be the effect, and at the same time be able to notice and then assist if appropriate. See, to get to that place, you have to pause and observe and then choose. But most live in a world of shoot, ready, aim. You look around, shoot, ready, aim. I don't like, I'm reactionary. And so where a lot of the questions that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes come from is this shift. And so if I take it into that next level, we are shifting from a construct, I'm going to call that third dimension, to another construct, I'm going to call that fifth dimension. And we'll talk about dimensions in some of the questions here. But one of the things about this third dimensional space is, what everything about dimensions, they have structure and rules. Really, structures and rules. See, spirituality is very mechanical in a lot of ways. It's all about love, it's all about light, but it's the application of how do you create. And so this aspect of dimensions, and particularly this third dimension, let's just be really simple. Let's decide that there is a set of rules and structures. One of the rules, primary rules, linear time. Everything works from linear time, past, present, future. Another one of those rules is duality. Choice, but really not choice. Mostly in third dimension there is no choice. There is reaction. It's like, oh, that's not good, this is bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. But when you begin to recognize that's what the game is you're playing, and that there's an ability to step into a different alignment, just change your thought, you're going to find that the ability to observe without getting it all over you is really a big deal. So this place that we're shifting into, this fifth dimensional space, this one's really actually pretty easy, because we're going to define it from the standpoint of kind of a single word, well-being. Well-being. Fifth dimension is all about well-being. Well, what is well-being? Well, I can tell you what well-being is not, a person would say, before they might tell you what it is. Well-being is not fear, not doubt, not judgment, condemning, imposition, control, domination, greed, and I can go on and on and on. See, those are results of the third dimensional game that we all have played in and have all over us. But in this fifth dimensional space, fear does not exist. A word like trust doesn't even exist, because there's nothing to distrust. Safety is not a word in the fifth dimension. There's nothing unsafe. So that's kind of weird. Nothing unsafe, nothing to distrust, and no fear. So rather than try to figure out what all that means and, well, what about this, what about that? Well, let's just call it well-being. Beauty, co-creation, cooperation, appreciation, gratitude, laughter, kindness. That's kind of nice. We'll call it well-being. But how do you get from judgments and fear and rules and structures and good and bad duality and a linear timeline that's hard to get out of in third dimension? Fifth dimension, it's not linear time. Time's different. Time's in present time. Everything is in present time. You create for the future. You have the history of the past to determine how you wish to enter the future, but you're always in present time. Now, so far, everything that's been said has been pretty simple, and at the same time, it is pretty consistent with how it works. So how do I get into this place of well-being? How do I begin to live in well-being? And so we'll talk about this fifth dimensional space a little bit, because I see a number of questions. But fifth dimension is physical, just like third dimension, physical. There's the tree outside your window is the same tree outside your window in the fifth dimension. So if it's not a change in physicalness, oh, it gets better. You can change physicalness, but that's another part of the story. But one of the things that is consistent is, how do you hold your thoughts, and how do you identify your feelings? How do you utilize your feelings and your thoughts? And so let me say a couple things, and then I want to begin to get into some of these questions. So one of the constructs that's useful to know is thoughts are electrical and emotions are magnetic. Thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. And then let's use another definition of feelings and emotions, because people constantly ask, well, what's the difference between a feeling and an emotion? So for the purpose of this, This is pretty accurate. It is not 100% correct, but it's a reference point, and it's a very useful reference point. Emotions are created by the rational mind. Feelings are created from the heart. Emotions have edges, judgment, resentment, doubt, etc. Feelings, laughter, joy, kindness, gratitude, respect, dignity, appreciation, no edges. Not a truth, a reference point. If you can hear that and use it as a reference point, you begin to get to ask yourself the question, am I in a third dimensional space, or am I kind of being in a fifth dimensional space? See, you can be in them right now. You live in these spaces. You live in a third and a fourth and fifth dimension right now. But what happens is when I don't have definition, I don't have reference points, it's really hard to distinguish where I am and what's going on. And so if you can begin to have a set of reference points in a fifth dimensional space, well-being, co-creation, cooperation, and you have that set of tools that allow you to observe the world without getting the world all over you, pretty much can guarantee you're going to make a different set of decisions than if you live in a third dimensional space where you're constantly on guard. Anxiety is in the body. You're worried about the things you've done in the past and hoping they never happen again in the future. And you're on edge and uncertain. And there's one more piece to that. I need them out there to tell me I'm okay. Now, a lot of people say, oh no, I know I'm okay. But yeah, you're okay. But the third dimensional game is structured in such a way that your well-being is a function of fitting in and doing what's safe. And a lot of times what's safe isn't about how do you walk on the street in bad neighborhoods. It's what's safe is, are they going to like me? Are they going to approve of me? And then this is where it gets really challenging, because all of that is done in the head. Okay, I'm going to think through this. I'm going to go to that school because they told me. I'm going to live this life because I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to have my white house with the white picket fence and the 2.3 kids and have the kind of good job, go to college, and then they will like me. Everybody doesn't get that choice. But there's a whole nother conflict, is these things that I'm told I should do to make them happy, they don't feel very good to me. I don't want to be a doctor, lawyer, blah, 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 to please them. Mom, dad, teacher, minister. I want to play the guitar. I really like gardening. I like just traveling around the world. That's not very successful in their eyes. So when you put all these pieces together and you start to look at how does the world work and what is it that I want, and how do I begin to enjoy myself, fifth dimension, how do I begin to live in a space of do unto others as I would have them do unto me, really actually has some impact about how do we create what we would like to experience. So let's start with the question from lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Where did you spend your last year? Now really look back. Off balance, fear, uncertainty, not okay. How was that? How is that space? In fact, maybe that's part of your whole life. Is that a useful place to be? Now let's ask another question. Out of all those things that I worried about, I was afraid of, I was terrified of, I was really concerned about, how many of them came to be? How much of your attention that we hold on fear and doubt and I'm not okay, how much of that actually plays out like you thought it was when you actually step into the circumstance that you're afraid of. And when you look at it, at least as I watch people, and it's just a very simple observation on one person's part, is I watch that what most people fear really doesn't unfold the way they fear it. And then when they get done with that, it's like, well, yeah, okay, that didn't happen, but what about this? I'm really worried that this is going to happen. So we have this habit of getting out of one level of fear and stepping into another level of fear, and then watching it for 30 days, 20 days, 5 days, rest of your life, whatever. It's out there in the future and it's going to bite me in the butt. I know it's going to get me. Would you like to live your life a little differently? What if you could simply step into a platform of alignment from the heart and use the rational mind to discern what's in front of me, present time, and then choose how you wish to engage with that? Really simple. Challenge with simple is quite often it's not easy. So let's have some conversation here. Let's kind of take what was just said, and I know a lot of the questions are directed in this place, I'm afraid of, or how do I change, or what can I do to make this better? So let's see if we can take this frame of reference, third dimension, fifth dimension, thoughts are electric, feelings are, and emotions are magnetic, because there's a whole bunch of questions about the sun, about the earth, about the magnetic fields, about climate change, all very much related to electricity and magnetism. So, Roxanne?
Yes, yes.
She's just right there.
If you would like to ask a question, just type it there in the chat and let us know if you're a level 1, 2, 3 person or if you're new to this work and where you live, because it's interesting. This first one is from Monica from Poland, and Monica is in the Project Park Bench. It's a question on, my question is on lost passion. I do not feel the excitement to do some things that I used to enjoy, and they gave me a nice feeling of fulfillment, hobbies, but also passion to read books, do some small everyday things as well. Now I feel like I have to make myself do some of them, but I lose interest after a few minutes. I'm not depressed, it's something else.
So one of the things that I watch many people do, particularly as they're starting to move through this spiritual moment that we're in, moment being I'm moving from a third dimensional space to a fifth dimensional space. I'm moving from fear and doubt to well-being. And first understand it's a transition. It's a wonderful gift, but it doesn't come instantaneously. Some assembly required to get from here to there. We are very much laden with all of the things I just ran out. But what I watch is people begin to become more aligned in a space of well-being. It takes a little while to understand the well-being, but you begin to lose your reference points. As you start to recognize this world is not what I'm all about, the noise and all of the other parts of it. I want something more. I stop doing what I'm supposed to do. Now, supposed to isn't my word. Supposed to is what their word is. To be spiritual, I need to read all these books. To get a good job, I need to go to college, etc. The supposed to. But many of you are losing your reference points. What's happening is you're starting to basically lose interest, let's put it that way, in all kinds of things. But when you stop and pause and you look at how what you're losing interest in, to a great extent it was just things you did to fill time. To basically, I exist, so I need to do something. I'm lonely, I'm bored, I'm fill in the blank. I need to do this, or they said to do this. But what's happening in this heart space, you're starting to lose your reference points. A lot of those reference points being what other people told you was good, bad, right, or wrong, and you following that script. So the answer to the question is, okay, you're losing all of those things you've done in the past, but what would you like to do? What feels good to you? What could basically create that sense of excitement? And if you kind of get back into that space where I'm present and I'm happy and I can begin to choose, you're going to find, at least a lot of people who are playing here are beginning to find from the same place, I like how I feel, but I don't have any interest. Food's not interesting, my job's not interesting, etc. Go for a walk. Go in, put yourself into places that feel good. And just simply choose to feel good. Yeah, that sounds really pretty academic and pretty simple. But if you basically begin to make this decision, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to go to the coffee shop and sit and have a nice cup of coffee and enjoy myself. I find people don't know what joy is. Word I used to have a lot of trouble with. I don't know what joy is. But I find if I start intentionally going for a walk to enjoy myself, or go to the coffee shop to enjoy myself, or go to someplace to enjoy myself, and I hold that concept of enjoy myself, there begins to be a shift in things that are interesting. So, simple answer. See what happens.
And Monica, I just want to add to that it's, don't beat yourself up. Just figure this is a transition, and you will get your passion back. There's so many MA players, Mastering Alchemy students, who are exactly where you are right now, and it appears to be part of the work. You know, it's like if you've ever taken yoga. For me personally, I have great results, and then all of a sudden I plateau and I think, oh, this isn't working anymore. But if you hang in there, that plateau shifts, and you'll get to stretch, you'll get to touch your knees, sort of thing. You'll find your passion again. So please don't beat yourself up.
There's one more part of that. You're starting to find what you're about. Now, this doesn't jump out at people very quickly, but I know what I don't want, but I don't know what I do want. And that's really this transition, very much about the transition. So if you can begin to decide, I'm going to do some things that I enjoy, or I go and I laugh, or I'm going to read a book just because I want to see if I can enjoy it. I've actually started reading adolescent science fiction about dragons and magic. Now, that's kind of bizarre. I mean, but it's fun. Just simply a time-space activity that means nothing other than I get to simply enjoy something really simple. So try it out.
Jim, here's a comment from Charlotte, who's in level 3. I can no longer be truly angry anymore. I was physically assaulted at work this week. I honestly could not feel anger toward the person, although they went on to assault other members of the staff. Tools of MA work.
Great.
Yeah. Here is a question from Carmen, and I'm not sure what the program Carmen's in. Can you discuss what a dimensional timeline split might look like?
So we're moving from this third dimensional space, control, domination, fear, etc., to well-being. And the physicalness of the world doesn't have to change to go from anger to joy. In fact, you can just sit there and kind of feel what anger feels like in this hand and feel what joy feels like in this hand. And there you are in the dimensional time shift. The more you begin to choose this reality that you want to live in, what happens is you're moving towards something that does not have that anger, rage, and judgmental type of space. This shift is unfolding in such a way to where there's a segmentation. The third dimensional game, for those who wish to play the third dimensional game, is going to continue. And for those who wish to step into well-being, is going to simply begin to happen more and more. And you're going to begin to notice, and most everybody playing and mastering alchemy is noticing, is I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. And that timeline shift is beginning to occur. There will be another question a little bit about, I don't understand time. I don't seem to have enough time. Time just seems to be disappearing. You know, Roxanne and I laugh every single night. Is like, didn't we just fall into bed just a second ago? And the answer is yes, we did just a second ago. We were just here. Present time allows for different types of responses. And so this time shift is providing extraordinary opportunities that are going to bring about a really different world. And knowing the questions that are coming, we'll talk about what that means in a few minutes.
And the reason why Jim knows the questions that are coming isn't so much that he's psychic, although he is that too. It's because when we first posted this event, I wrote, ask your questions here. So a whole bunch of you did, and we saved them up, and I'm reading them off my screen right now. Let's see. Here is a question from Sherry, who is not in MA. How do you deal with friends not understanding when you're dedicated to this way of living? I understand their hesitance, but I live in the country in a town of only 900 people. There's no one to go for support or guidance. Any chance that anybody knows of other groups that are legit?
Well, we don't. There's lots of groups all over the place. We don't have groups listings of where you go to find the answer to that as the question is being asked. But what I can tell you from the standpoint of all the tools in mastering alchemy, when you begin to really get clear about standing on your side of the rose, defining the edge of your aura, and then being on this side of it, and really clearly delineating from the edge of the aura to my heart is me, and everything on the other side is Shakespeare's theater for my entertainment. When you get very clear about that, and then you start to recognize what it feels like to be on your side of that point of delineation, the ability to start to recognize that a great amount of what goes on in the world in front of you has absolutely nothing to do with you. Now, you live in a small town and everybody knows everybody in the town. That doesn't mean you have to wear all your wants and problems on your sleeve all the time. And even though people know you probably from growing up, there's an aspect where you can begin to live your life and say hello to those people, just have conversation with some of these people that are not significant about ain't it awful and the world's terrible and all of the problems. Stay on your side of the rose and find an answer that I find works a lot of times. It's like, wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I hope you have a nice day. You don't have to throw energy. You don't have to defend yourself. You just don't engage in a whole lot of things until there's an opportunity. Change the subject is really valuable. It's interesting what you're talking about. How was your dinner last night? Amazing how people don't remember in 3D what they were just talking about. And most of the time they're talking about themselves or pointing the finger at somebody else. Just to allow it and then begin to simply shift the conversation. It happens from your side of the rose.
Jim, this one is from Mary. I'm not sure what program Mary's in either. With regard to the elementals, how can we work with them to bring about a realignment with them?
So the elementals are incredible beings of light, beyond what most people can even imagine. And so let's go back to the beginning of where did the elementals come from? When the earth was being created, when the 12 planets of Christ consciousness were being created, one of the things that happened is all the great beings, when they started to find physicalness is a creation. It hasn't been here forever, it's a creation. Most everything lives in non-physicalness, like most everything, 99.99% non-physical, the universe, consciousness. But this game called physicalness, when it was created, many of the great beings, avatars, etc., really got excited about coming into physicalness. They'd come in and there'd be a rock, there'd be a tree, there'd be all kinds of things. It evolved. But in the process, there was in the fall of consciousness story, which is great, the beings would come in and they would get caught up in, let's call it 3D, anger, rage, resentment, whatever, and then they would leave. And one of the things that the great creator beings wanted to make sure is when you came and played in the earth, you remembered what you were. All the beauty, all the great opportunities, all the things that you were. And so when the elementals were recreated, they were created with a task to reflect back to the avatar, or whatever, who was visiting, the Christed nature of that being. Now, when I say Christed, I'm simply saying an aspect of Creator's light. Not a religion, not a man, not a story. It's a vibrational field of Creator. Unique. But the elemental's job was to reflect back this light to the beings, to remind them of what they were and who they were. The elemental's job was also to take the great creations and amplify it. And so the gardens of the earth, the growth of the earth, for example, is a reflection of the creation of the beings that came here. The earth has gone through lots of iterations and lots of fabulous gardens and creations. But the elementals have never left that. That's not true. The elemental's job is to reflect back to you who you are. So when you play with the elementals, say hello. Kind of get into this alignment of joy and begin to say, what can I create with you? There's an interesting part of this fifth dimensional shift that's going on is the elementals are becoming extremely active in the process because the earth is changing. The earth is going into a whole new iteration. And so that's neither good or bad. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. But the elementals right now are very much wanting humanity to see what's possible to shift into this new evolution. And so let me give you an example, and I've said it in numbers of classes. And one of the things when you lived in Atlantis took advantage of the electrical field of the earth. So the atmosphere is electrical. And there were great creations, one really simple creation. And Nikola Tesla tried to bring this creation onto the earth once again. And they're called pulsars. So it's a pole with a ball on the top of it, kind of a little dome over the top of it. And it simply drew electricity from the atmosphere. Unlimited power to run the planet. That's coming back. You will very likely see this in your lifetime. And so the elementals are reflecting back these types of aspects to bring the earth back into a place of balance. Really exciting stuff. And that's just a simple one. But think about it. What if you were able to have a pole outside of your house that provided all of the electricity? Fossil fuels would no longer exist. So can you hold that creation in your imagination and kind of see it beginning to happen once again, because you're the ones who are drawing it into creation.
Jim, I have a couple people asking about Project Park Bench. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, what it was, what we did during that time.
So in alignment with what was just said about the earth, one of the things that's unfolding is you have the capacity to create this new earth. Now, new earth doesn't mean a new planet somewhere out in the solar system or in another universe. It's simply a planet that basically provides what you would like it to provide. And so let's keep it simple and call it the fifth dimension: well-being, appreciation, gratitude, no fear. And so the more of you are a creator being, very capable one. And It just simply means what you put your attention on, the universe simply assists you in creating. But playing the game of the third dimension, we're all in agreement with the game. We just came into it. Yep, I'm here. This is how it plays. Okay, I'll follow the rules. What you're all doing is basically saying, I'm not willing to play that game anymore. I want a new earth. I want a new creation. I want a new experience. And so the Park Bench Project was very much about that nature of you, spiritual being, who understands landscape, or who understands architecture, landscape, and environment. Simple words. Architecture, building a frame for a new earth to exist. Landscape, putting in all the attributes of what you'd like to experience in that new earth. The environment, how would I like to feel, enjoy, and walk through this and the result that I would like to play. So about 5,000 of you said, I want to play. And so for 20 months, we had once a month a session going into the new earth, going into the new earth, creating it, holding it, thinking it, feeling it, constructing it. And that is held, that is unfolding quite nicely, actually. We're going to have another series of sessions, probably 3 more sets of sessions, actually one starting next week, and talking about the construct of the new earth, also the role of the elementals in creating it, and the ability to basically create a vibrational field for all of humanity to step into this when they choose. So Park Bench, kind of a fun project to play in.
Jim, here is one from Corina. Does this shift affect the body?
Yes. Hopefully so. And the great part of that answer is the magnetic fields. Remember I said at the beginning, thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. So when you hold a thought of anger, how does it feel? And so you know the answer to that. You hold a thought of joy and laughter and amusement. How does that feel? So when you think a thought, an ugly thought, an angry thought, or an instant reactionary thought, the emotion slams right into it. I don't like that, that's bad. How does it feel in the body? And so we've really been good at playing third dimension, having thoughts of anger, judgment, etc., and the emotions that go along with them. And then we've been really good about guilt and blame, and I don't like it, so I don't really want to deal with it, so I stick it in my backpack and hope nobody ever sees it, except the body still vibrates at that guilt and blame. As you start to get into this fifth dimensional space well-being, no guilt and blame, you start to allow the body to begin to align to the heart. But one of the things that's happening that's moving us quickly there is the electromagnetic field of the sun drives the magnetic constructs of the earth. And the electromagnetic fields of the earth are changing. And if you kind of look at the science side of all of this, you find that North Pole and South Pole, that used to be like this, they're not there anymore. There's one way over here, the North Pole way over here in Siberia, and moving rapidly south, and the South Pole nicely up here in the Pacific Ocean, kind of outside of New Zealand area. And these poles are going to, at some point, become a singular pole. So the magnetic field is very much shifting. It affects your brain directly. It affects your thinking structures, electromagnetic fields. So a lot of people have been spending time over the last 20 years talking about the cell phone bothering me and 5G coming, very much an electromagnetic field. But the shifting of the sun and the earth's magnetic fields and how they're playing out are all moving you into a very different direction. I'm not going to call it good or bad, but you are very definitely being affected by it. One of the primary things from the good side is as you get into the heart space, 5D, you begin to choose well-being, staying on your side of the rows, and being happy, if you can be happy, that stabilizing factor of the electromagnetic field of the heart basically brings everything into balance. So there is a balancing force in the heart that is very available to you to play in. But the issue is, can I get into present time? And if I'm worrying about the past and worrying about the future and blaming them and guilty about, you're not in present time. You're living in the past and the future. But if you can get quiet, my side of the rose, grounded, center of my head, higher mind, center of the heart, you find that you begin to have access to, we may talk about this somewhere in the questions, to variations of love. Love is a really powerful tool. It is this, oh, I love you, and oh, you love me, and isn't that cute? And don't I like it? Yeah, it's really good. That's a tiny piece of love. It's a tool. It's a powerful force. You begin to use the emerald green color coding, for example, a vibrational expression of love that is pure balance. Just simply draw it through the body. And you begin to offset some of these, no, wrong way of saying it. You begin to adjust into the new magnetic fields in the way you are wanting to experience well-being.
Jim, this one is from Zeta. I'm finding myself with one foot in 3D and the other foot in 5D as I work in a very strict environment, and around me are people who are living the COVID hysteria. I understand why teachers live outside the matrix, and I wonder how we can combine regular life and work with 5D.
It's not difficult. However, as soon as I say that, it's not simple. Oh, I should say no. It's simple, but it's not easy. And so you have tools. You've been playing in this body of work, Mastering Alchemy. And in a lot of ways, it's a matter of staying on your side of the rose and simply allowing them to do what they're doing and basically seeing if you can stay in present time, grounded. Great answer. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with how that's happening. I'm sorry that's happening. But you don't have to add an emotion to it. You simply can express an opinion or a thought without engaging in all of the work. But see, this is really the challenge, isn't it? That the world is in a state of off balance, hysteria, anxiety, fear, and you're being asked to kind of walk through all of that. And so it all goes back to, from Mastering Alchemy's point of view, the tools, the abilities that are being enhanced, your skill set to simply hold your space, smile, and keep walking through what you're walking through.
This one is from Maytap. How long can this transition last? Maytap's in level 1.
It's going to last a long time, long time. And how do you choose to experience yourself in the present moment? And there is, in fact, the answer. The transition is all around you, and you are in transition. But if you can get into present time, you can like yourself, you can sit quietly. It's as if you step onto a moving sidewalk, and the moving sidewalk's moving from point A to point B, and you're simply sitting quietly as the world around you begins to shift. As you start to use the tools in level 2, in level 3, you start to find that you can manage your universe, and the majority of what's going on outside of you is simply other people's movies. If you really stop and get in present time, get in good space, and then pay attention to the world, you're going to find, I'm just going to use a number, 90% of what's going on, and that's probably a low number, has absolutely nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you. And yet, what you're feeling is everybody's engagement with all of the movies that have nothing to do with them either, and being off balance because, you know, the world's going to come to an end tomorrow. Well, maybe. But if you run that through your body, I know I'm going to get COVID next week. If you run that through your body, how does it feel? And then what happens, lions and tigers and bears? A year later, you didn't get COVID. But how was the present time moment, every moment, in the anxiety, in the fear, in the uncertainty. So it really comes back to, how do I manage myself? How do I stay on my side of the rows? How do I observe? And then how do I choose an action that I can step into with what's right in front of me?
Jim, this one is a good next question following up from what you just said. This is from Olga. This year I saw that the fear I experienced was, quote, completely irrational. A few times I got almost hysterical about what was a very minor concern. My perceived threat level felt off the charts. I observed it and I was shocked. But it felt impossible to step out of that space. It's like I forget all my tools when I'm in the space of irrational fear.
Yeah. So the answer is pretty simple. Are you giving more attention to the rational fear, or are you simply choosing to be grounded, center of your head, sitting in the heart, and recognizing I'm just sitting in a chair right now, and I don't have all of that drama actually happening to me right now. Now, are there circumstances that you have to solve 10 minutes from now, 2 hours from now, tomorrow? Yeah. But you're not in the future. So if you can simply recognize, I'm going to be right here, right now, and become quiet and comfortable, now I have the ability to look at what's in front of me tomorrow, next hour, and choose differently. So have you ever chosen an answer from hysteria, fear, resentment, anger, judgment? How did it work? Usually not well. If you can get quiet and then pause and then choose, you're going to find a whole different script that begins to be available to you to not only solve that particular issue, but begin to recognize, I don't need to hold my attention here, it doesn't serve me. And pretty soon you're not in that attention point anymore. And you're finding that as you begin to recognize well-being, I like this. I can just give to myself. I'm going to go to the coffee shop. I'm going to make it a habit. I'm going to go in the morning. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to spend 20 minutes. I'm going to enjoy my coffee. I'm going to choose to say hello to people. Nice day, isn't it? How are you doing? Hopefully you'll have a conversation of well-being is what you want. Get up and leave. If you can begin to create an action that gives you a sense of well-being, begin to build on it. It's a choice. Now, people are going to sit there and go, yeah, that's easier said than done. Yes, it's easier said than done. However, if you hold that position, you're going to revert back to, well, I'm going to do what I've always done. So the question is, can I, in the moment, present time, right now, hold this vibration? And then right now hold the vibration, and right now hold the vibration. So now never leaves. Time passes through now, but now never leaves. And if you can begin to hold that well-being in now, you're going to realize you have a whole lot of choices available to you that you've never seen before, because I'm too busy being angry or judgmental or in anxiety and fear. Hope that helps.
And Olga, there's something I'd like to add to that. And I bet if you put your detective hat on and you looked at what the situations were where you became rationally fearful, there would be a pattern. Or you'd find, oh, it's always when this person is in the room,
Yeah.
or it's always when I'm in this office. So find the pattern and recognize, okay, I have more information now. So the next time you go into that situation or anything that looks close to that situation, before you get into that room, do some energy work to hold your tone so when you walk into that room, you don't get knocked off balance. So that means if it's in the office, you just take 5 minutes and go to the bathroom and sit there and ground and put up your rows and use all the tools that you have on your tool bench before you walk into the room. So have the strategy first, set the energy for it. Yeah. And don't beat yourself up.
In the same context, we haven't talked about this, but there's these living words. We talk about living words, and living word be like certainty. And so if I said to you, have you ever been certain? Rational mind says, oh yeah, I know what certain is. But if I said to you, close your eyes, take a breath, and then feel certain, something happens in the body. The body sits up straight, it feels stronger, there's a pulling in, more of a clarity. You see, that's a living vibration. That's a sensation, a feeling in the body. But if you can begin to choose these words, certain, we talk about 7 of them, but certain, capable, seniority, gracious, powerful heart words, and you know you're going to go into a meeting or a situation that's uncomfortable or uncertain, stop. Kind of build that triangle of words, feel them, choose to be grounded, and then step into that space in the energy of these words that you're living. First thing happens, you change the whole dynamic of the room because somebody is expecting you to step into that space just like you always step into that space. And they will notice you're not the same person walking into the space. Quite often, people just stop, well, I was going to beat her up this way, but I'll just wait, or I'll not do that. So setting the energy in the space redefines the results of the experience in the next moment.
This one is from Christina, who's in level 3. Is there a method of consciously expanding time to create the space we need? I'm feeling rather squeezed and struggling to find time.
So just by using the word struggling, you're defining your own answer. So the answer to the question is yes. Is it ability? Do you have the ability to spread time out? Do you have the ability to shrink time? Absolutely. Do you do that from a third dimensional space? No way at all. Not possible. Because you're so caught up in the timeline of the rules of the third dimension. But when you start managing yourself and you start to live in present time, the ability to simply be in that moment and drawing to you everything that you need in that moment becomes very much available to you. And so this aspect of time in the next couple of years, much more so than right now, is going to create real frustration for a lot of people, 3D. But those of you playing in a space of managing yourself from now, right, this minute now, and on your side of the rows and observing, recognizing I have choice, you're going to find that you're going to be able to compress time. It's not explainable. You're going to find that you're going to need something to happen, and somehow it just happens. One of the things that most of you playing in level 2 and year 3 are finding that instead of having to go to the world for what I want and them approving and giving me it, you're finding that every time you sit and get quiet and focus on what you want, the world comes to you. Everything comes to you. And most of you begin to define it as coincidence. Oh, I just thought that thought. But what begins to happen is you thought that thought and it happened over and over and over and over again. It's not a coincidence. And in that present time space, you're no longer even dealing with time as linear. You're starting to recognize this is what I want and how I wish to bring it to me. There's a whole nother aspect of this time for most of you playing in level 3, you're playing at this right now, is how am I being aware I'm sitting in a chair and in a month I wish to have this experience? Would you put yourself into the experience a month out and be there in this moment, present time? And so being in 2 places at the same time is very doable. You don't take your body, you're not going to have a physical experience in this minute, but you will have that physical experience 30 days out where you are in that space, sitting there consciously as an energy, as a being. So more pieces to that, but yes, you can manage time.
Here's a trick, Christina. For any of you who've been around Mastering Alchemy for a while, I like to make up little tricks to kind of fool myself into higher awareness. And
she says.
So So this was happened last week. So I'm late, and I'm driving to the gym to do my dance class. And I leave the house a few minutes too late, so I'm in a little bit of a hurry. And then there's construction on the road. And so what I do is I create, you're going to think this is silly, I create a golden liquid pathway like the yellow brick road. And it goes from where I am sitting in the car all the way around the turnaround, the corner, all the way to the gym. And I just clean it off with my roses and I make it this golden. Well, I'm late. There's constructions. I get into the gym too late, but I walk into the room and the teacher's having technical difficulties, so the class has not even started yet.
Yep.
Ta-da!
And there'll be times where you walk in and you'll realize I'm right on time. Wait, that's not possible. I was 10 minutes late getting out of the house. Walk in the door, right on time.
Yep.
So is it possible? Yes. Can you believe it in a third dimensional reality? Absolutely not. You can't believe it because it doesn't happen that way in a third dimensional reality. But you're no longer playing in only the third dimensional reality.
Jim, this one is from Gina, also in level 3. The poles becoming one. Does that have something to do with unity consciousness?
This whole shift that we're in is moving you to a unity consciousness. So from that answer, the answer would be yes. Do I know how to make that make sense? No, I don't know how to, but I'm just going to give you a simple answer. Yes, and I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, so this one is from Mark in Florida. I'm in level 1 and I want to take level 2, but could you tell me more about it?
Sure. So level 2 is very much about, well, let me define it this way. Level 1 is people begin to play in all of these tools, and one of the common reference points is as you play here, people start to say, I knew this was real. And the people who say, I'm not from this planet, I don't know why I'm here, I'm unhappy living on the earth, blah, blah, blah. Level 1, I knew this was real. Level 2, the beginning of level 2 is really all about learning a whole set of tools and skills and enhanced abilities, as I said earlier. But it's really about how do I get rid of all of this stuff in my backpack? The I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I'm not good enough. They all told me I would never succeed. And I've been carrying it around, and people have told me all that. They've kind of beat me up and all that, and I believe I'm not okay. So one of the things you begin to deal with is impossible to be not okay. Impossible. But we work really hard at being not okay. So as you start to begin to have a glimpse of it's impossible to be not okay, and you're given tools, the 4th, 5th, 6th rays of creation. These are huge energetic constructs that nobody ever bothered to tell you about, that when you apply them, a different result occurs. 8th ray, another one, beginning to change the configuration of the chakra function to where they function differently. Really big deal. There's something called the Eye of Horus, which isn't a necklace or a mystery school, or it may be, but the Eye of Horus is in the brain. It relates to many of the brain functions, the pineal, the medulla, the pituitary gland, hippocampus, but 6th chakra, 7th chakra, 8th chakra. And when you begin to put that back together and turn it on, it really coalesces all of your psychic spiritual abilities into a functioning unit of awareness. You simply begin to know answers. So as you start to apply these tools and get rid of the I'm not okay, because you start to really recognize it wasn't my idea that I'm not okay. It was my mother, father, teacher, minister, even best friend who said, what's wrong with you? And we accept that gift. You're not smart. You accept the gift, and then you ask the worst question you can ask, what did I do wrong? And you're going to find you did nothing wrong. And it really is somebody else's energy that's sitting right in the middle of the center of your head, heart, 6th chakra, 7th chakra, all saying you're not okay. Would you like a set of tools that just eliminates that electromagnetic field that simply neutralizes, gone, their opinion of your well-being? So there's much more, but basically you start to get rid of the baggage, and then you start to see who you are in terms of, there's another part where you reconfigure the chakras. Most people think that chakra is a disc facing forward, unless you went to Barbara Brennan's healing schools, which was very good stuff. She had a disc also facing backwards. But when you start to play with Archangel Michael and Raphael, who simply comes in one of those sessions with you to turn those little discs into brilliant spheres of light, like they are meant to be, then everything starts to change. So, level 2, beginning to recognize who you are rather than who everybody else has labeled you to be.
Who everyone wants you to be.
Yeah, because they can manage you, control you, keep you over there. If you stay out of my way, then I won't have to change. They say, even though they don't know that. And they're just doing what their mom, dad, teacher, minister said also.
Jim, I have a few people here who have a similar question, and it's how to stay disengaged when what's going on feels awful. Like, for example, Michelle from Detroit is asking, I'm trying to cope with the recent mass school shooting nearby. And so when a person is engaged or face to face with all these awful things happening in the world, how do they stay disengaged, neutral?
So this is the noise of the world. It's going to continue. It's going to get even more so. And so the real question is, how do I manage myself as I'm staring into the noise of what's in front of me? And so the first answer is tools. I mean, literally, stay on your side of the rows. Now, okay, I got the tools. I'm in year 2. I'm got this, somebody will say. What happens is the noise on the other side of the rows is very real in some cases. Mass shootings, 3 blocks away. The whole neighborhood, the whole school, the whole city, the whole county has now got something that just happened to them in a very real way that was hearsay just before that happened. Oh, it happened in Colorado, it happened in Florida, it happened in other places. Isn't that too bad? But now it happened in my front yard. And so the amplification of the neighborhood goes considerably higher. This is a hard statement to say, or even hear, is it's noise. Now, did my kid go to that school? Yes. Did something happen to your kid? No. But you don't understand. I get that. I really get that. It's so close to home that it's visceral. I feel it in my body. The real answer is, I'm drawing what I don't want into my space. Okay, that's the answer. So how do I keep it out of my space? And part of it is a word like neutral. When everything is out of balance, one of those living words is neutral. Stop, sit down, all this is going on. Take a breath, be in neutral. And play with neutral. Neutral is everything's engaged. I step on the gas, nothing happens. Take a breath, neutral. Just kind of take another breath, ground. You bringing your question is, how do I bring myself back into my space when I have all of that noise going on? It could be right here in front of you. One of the first things you learn with the rose is you play with the rose. Somebody can walk right up to the tip of your nose, and if you're on your side of the rose, you're not the effect of that person. Now, intellectually, okay, I can even hear that. Practically, does it work? Yes, but does it work without some practice and playing with the rose? No, it's like you give more attention to what you don't want than what you do want. And this is not a comforting, meaning to be comforting to the question, but meaning to give a reality to the question. It's not my circumstance. It's part of the movie that I live in, but it's not my part of the movie. Now, that's not an uncompassionate statement. It simply says, how do I manage myself in and around all these dramas that are right in front of me? If you're in that energy, in the hysteria, in the anxiety, very real energy, how effective are you at grounding the circumstance, assisting others, bringing about balance into this, and helping other people become more sane in their own hysteria? Because it's very real stuff and people are in a lot of pain. How do you help in that situation if you are in that situation also? So these tools are really all about, this is really an ugly, uncomfortable, painful circumstance that I'm watching everybody go through. How do I find balance so that I may be able to bring balance into this circumstance? And so it's a real challenging situation, but I'm going to say it as clear as I can. It's going to continue and it's going to amplify. And so what does amplified look like? I don't know. I don't know what's going to show up on your doorstep tomorrow morning. But the movie is getting much more animated and much more reactionary and much more demanding control. Well, there's a whole lot of beings out there who want to take control, and they're doing it from fear also. And so just look at all this unfolding, and typically in this cycle of events, what you see is exactly what you're seeing, is more or of an authoritative state of being coming into play to take control, to stop, or to control. Watch it, because that's where we're going.
This one, Jim, is from another Christina. Could you talk more about the new Earth and how the reality might look? Will we be able to live without connection with the people, rules, and regulations of 3D?
Well, you know, if you're able to kind of play where a lot of what I watch, a lot of the people who have completed Mastering Alchemy, I mean, there's a whole aspect of you engage in that living light body. That's the whole purpose here towards the end of Mastering Alchemy work, is how do I manage myself? How do I navigate myself in a world that is in mass transition? And actually, I just lost track of the question.
Okay, let me find it again. It was Christine. She was asking, could you talk more about the new Earth and how the reality may look?
Thank you. Wait, well, I was going there. So all of this energetic that's going on the planet is going to continue to go on and continue to be consuming, third dimension. But there are millions of people who, in their heart, whether their expression is spirituality is religions, or their expression is, like so many of you, not bound by a religion, but bound by a very clear understanding of who you are and what you are, there is a transition. And so this transition into this new Earth really starts from the place of recognizing there is a new Earth, well-being. We'll just call it really simple, that fifth dimensional space of well-being. What do I have to do to begin to be in well-being? And that's the transition, because all I know is they have said this is what I need to do to be successful, but it's never really felt right to me in my heart. Or I see all this world going on, but I don't associate with this world. So what do you associate with? And how do you begin to wish to define it? Now, not so much mentally, but from the heart. Because go back to the very first question, I've read a lot of books and I'm spiritual and I've really enjoyed all that, but I've lost interest and I don't know what to replace it with. What do you want to replace it with? And then how would what you wanted to replace it with feel if you were living in it? This word feeling is so much more than thinking. And when you start to feel, think, feel from the heart versus think, feel from the head, thinking and feeling, being aligned in the heart you begin to have a relationship with the higher self. And the higher self doesn't deal in emotions. The higher self deals much more in feelings. And so in that feeling space, what is it that I would like to feel? It's not so much that I want a particular tree or I want a material thing, meaning a beautiful house or a place on the beach. All that comes with this. But it starts from the feeling in the heart, living in the heart, and simply beginning to recognize this is what I want. And then intending this is what I want. And then holding your attention on the intention and then following through. It's as simple, go back to the coffee shop. I'm going to begin to give something to myself every day. Repetitive. I'm going to go sit, I'm going to have that cup of coffee, I'm going to smile, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm not going to look at the news, I'm not going to look at the streaming tragedy of third dimension. I'm going to sit here and enjoy myself. Shifting to a place that is what you want is going to start giving you what you want. It really is that simple. It is not necessarily easy, but it is that simple. The new earth. Actually, when you start, there's a whole nother way. Let me add this piece. Something that would be very valuable is when you go to sleep at night, for those who aren't playing in Mastering Alchemy, before you go to sleep, if you just sit on the edge of the bed and then ask yourself 2 questions. Who got in my space today? Real simple question. Not a judgment. Just look back at your day. Oh, Sally said, the person at the stop sign looked at me funny, etc. Somebody said. Create a rose in your mind. Have the rose collect up all those people that got in your space today. Somebody argued with you, somebody didn't disagree with you. No problem. Put them in a rose, explode it. Second question is, where did I leave myself? Oh, I left myself at the stop sign going, how dare that guy look at me like that? There I am. Left yourself. Put up a rose, collect you up, explode the rose, take another step, imagine a big gold sun over your head. I'm going to give to myself. Fill yourself up and go to sleep. When you go to sleep at night, intend to go to the gardens of the new earth. Remarkable things you will experience and see that are not in the 3D world that you live. Incredible things that you'll see. And then intend, when I come back in the morning, I'm going to come back through the gardens. And I'm going to just lay there for a moment rather than get up and start my day. And I'm just going to ask myself, or just look at the garden. Imagine it. What did I just see? Imagine what you just saw. What happens is you begin to start to frame this new earth into your realities in a way that isn't part of the 3D script. So try it and see what happens.
Jim, this one is from Rebecca. Shouldn't my life improve if I'm using the tools? I'm getting better, I'm feeling better, but why are things in my life disintegrating?
Well, I don't know how to define disintegrating. So one of the things that happens is we have accumulated years and years and years, right up to this moment, judgments and opinions about the world. And we have chosen to align ourselves with the 3D rules and structures. And so it's unconscious. I mean, how many times have you ever, how many little phrases do you have that you just automatically repeat in certain circumstances? No thought given. You just say whatever the phrase is. And if you stop and ask yourself, what does that mean? And where did I pick that phrase up? Just a throwaway phrase. If you basically start to look at that, you realize it has nothing to do with you and it has nothing to do with anything. It's a habit. Just if X, then Y. In the space that we're playing in 3D, we have a lot of habits. We've made a lot of decisions. Somebody says, those people are X. You don't know that. And you go, oh, okay. And then the next day, somebody else says it. And then somebody else a year later says it. And then somebody 2 years later says, you know anything about those people? And you say, yeah, it's an X. They're an X. So we create this awareness, and then it's repeated. Then we create it into a belief, and then we turn it into a habit, and then it becomes unconscious action. All sits in the backpack. And so a lot of that unconscious action is what's all coming to the surface. As that gets cleaned out, level 2, as that gets cleaned out, the ability to start to recognize a circumstance without having an automatic reaction response is going to become very valuable as this transition all changes.
And Rebecca, if you mean by disintegrating, if what you mean by that is you're losing your friends, you don't like your hobbies anymore, your job isn't satisfying, you are not eating the same way, you're not turned on by certain foods like you used to, if that's what you mean by disintegrating, well, congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Because that means the work that you're doing, if it's, I recognize your name, the MA work, the Mastering Alchemy work, is working.
Yep.
You're shifting yourself into a place that's new, that you haven't been before. You're stepping a few rungs higher up the ladder. So of course you're going to lose your friends, and steak isn't going to taste the same as it always used to, or all those things, if that's what you're considering disintegrating.
Yeah. And if things aren't working, because the world out there is really getting noisier and worse, the question you want to ask is, where am I giving my attention to? Where is my attention? Is my attention more on what isn't working, what I don't like, or the things that I know how to basically structure myself?
Jim, this one is from Cheryl Ann. When will the mini ice age begin? Next Thursday?
4 o'clock. So this next, I mean, we've been talking about global warming for a long time, and one of the things that may happen, has happened in the past, is as you begin to get this amount of carbon dioxide into the air, you start to also form clouds. And if you get enough in the air and you begin to create a cloud, a water vapor configuration, even in carbon dioxide, you're going to get a cloud cover. It's happened a lot of times. And you get enough cloud cover, you don't get sun. And then you wind up getting a drop in temperature. And so, given the way the given the way the sun's magnetic fields are changing, it's trackable by looking at the ice rings in the Arctic and also looking at tree rings in different places. This process of ice age or cold periods have happened a number of times. The Aldrin effect in 1640 through 1720. Europe froze, Russia froze, northern China, Mongolia froze. India didn't have rain. It was all this mini ice age. And so it is very possible, I'm going to say even more probable, that somewhere in the next period of time, I'm going to say you're going to start to see it happening in mid-2022. Oh, that's next month. Well into 2035, 2040, you're going to see a cooling period of time. I'm going to speculate here. So maybe that's correct, maybe it's not correct. But what if it was correct? How would you choose? And then there's going to be other questions. Where should I go to live? I don't know. What is it that you want to experience? And then choose accordingly. But don't choose from fear, please. Just choose from being practical in terms of, okay, if this was going to happen, how would I deal with this?
You're so psychic. Here's a question from Kelly. I feel like homesteading, or at least mostly living off the grid, is the wave of the future. What are your thoughts?
You ask the person who lives in New York City, Singapore, Zurich, are you going to go homestead because it's a good thing? They're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? So if it's a good thing for you, do it. But there's no no unified answer to that. It's good for everybody or not.
Jim, here's a question from Anna. I've seen a rise in mental illness among our young people. Anxiety, depression, illnesses caused by emotional trauma. Are these side effects of the current energies, and how can we help them and help ourselves when this is happening within our family?
Yeah, this is really challenging for a whole bunch of reasons. One, these kids that are kids, let's call them under 18 for the moment, they're different than the baby boomers. They're different than the millennials. They have a whole different construct. Then you start looking at the kids that have been born after 2012. They are simply different. Their whole way they observe the world and how they think is different. Are they physically different? No, but how they operate is different. The challenge is particularly in developing world, we have our way of life up until coronavirus, and all of a sudden that way of life is being dramatically interrupted. School, socialization, coronavirus, parents dying, etc., etc., etc. And these kids, the parents don't have skills to deal with it all. They're upset. The society isn't functioning like it's supposed to be. And these kids are so energetically sensitive in terms of their abilities to perceive. I don't mean just psychic, they are that too, but being able to perceive the world. And they don't have the skills that we're talking about here. They don't have that rose to define what's theirs and what's not theirs. So this massive level of hysteria, drama, death, interruption is just passing through their fields without any shaped behavioral patterning in place to deal with the third dimensional world. So this is going to continue also for some time, and it's challenging. Although a lot of these kids are not being affected by it, we see the media explanation, and we know there's a lot of kids that are being affected. But this is also possibly shaping them for something in the future that they're going to have to deal with as a future that's very different than the future we're playing in right now. So, no particular answer to how to solve that.
Jim, talk a little bit about the kids and how we can adapt the Mastering Alchemy tools for our children. And anybody online here, if you've had success with the Mastering Alchemy tools with your kids, just write it there in the chat room and I'll share it with everybody.
Yeah, so these tools, particularly level 1 tools, you can we get questions often. I'm a grandmother and I'm watching my young kids, and my kids are not being nice to their young kids, that kind of a comment. But the young kid really likes me. So if you've got these tools, level 1 tools, I mean, you sit down and you say, let's play a game. Let's create a tail and put the tail into the center of the planet. And all the bad thoughts go down through the tail. The kid doesn't even second guess you. It just does it. So here's a way of basically letting all that uncomfortableness leave. You tell them, and here, let me show you where the center of your head is. And here, put a rose up between me and you. And when you talk to people or they're having a hard time, just be really aware of the rose right between you and them. They instantly get it, because see, these tools are heart tools. These are things you absolutely know. You're not learning a thing in Mastering Alchemy. Very little is learned. Most everything is remembered. You know this stuff. And so that's kind of the way to deal with young kids. Try to get them really young, because when they're teenagers. And, they operate differently sometimes.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of videos lately on YouTube about kids that might be 3 or 4 years old, and they're with their even younger sibling, and they're saying, take a deep breath. And they're breathing in and out with the little one, and the little one starts breathing. And so they know this.
They know this. They know this. It's what will be is very, very exciting. It'll just take some time. We are in transition, and that's the piece you want to really keep in your awareness in the forefront. This is a transition. This is not an ending space, although it's going to last some time. It's not going to be over next month. Coronavirus is not going to be gone next year. It's something, these kind of things are with you for the duration.
Here's a comment from Christina. I taught my daughter how to find the center of her head, and she immediately expressed the quietness.
Yeah. Play with these kids, they'll blow you away.
Yeah. Here's a question from Elizabeth. Are there further changes in the sleep space? How do we create greater awareness and remembering of the sleep space? Jim, you might want to define the difference between sleep space and dream.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this from a mastering alchemy point of view, not from just a lay point of view. And so the dream space is a fourth dimensional space. Fourth dimension is a thought form. It is not a physical place. There's nothing physical in the fourth dimension, but thought form. So you have dreams, and they're really visceral. They're very real in dreams. So there's a dream space in the sleep space. And that's the place where you pretty much leave the body to go to sleep and pass through that. And you come back through it when you come back into the body. But there's a whole nother aspect of where you go when you go to sleep. You go home. You go home. You go back into a merged state with an aspect of the soul. And you're fully conscious. But to play this game, you have to leave fully consciousness behind, because you said, send me. You put a bag over your head. You forgot who the creator is. You forgot who you are. You said, how deep into the darkness should I go? And the creator smiled and said, knock yourself out. And you said, I'll show you. Watch this. And you dove really deep into the darkness to unwind yourself to get out. That's the game of the 3D. But this sleep space is where you go. And one of the things that is happening is, I'm talking to mastering alchemy people and those who wish to play there at some point, is in the sleep space you go there in what's called the etheric body. Now most people call that the astral body. Better reference would be etheric body. And that etheric body, you go home. And everything is known in that etheric body. You have access to all of your information. But when you come back into the physical body, a lot of that just gets left behind in the sleep space, in a manner of speaking. What's now beginning to happen, and we're particularly doing this in a program called Reset for about 400 of the people who have completed Mastering Alchemy, are playing in another game in the light body, and it's going, that etheric body knows in the sleep space a lot of stuff. But as you begin to live in the etheric body, then there's a piece of information that allows you to start to operate from the etheric body. Now, the reason Mastering Alchemy is structured the way it is so that you put yourself back together. You turn things back on. You turn the brain back on, the neurological messaging systems, the 8th chakra, the 9th chakra, 10th and 11th chakra. You begin to put yourself back together to go home. But in the etheric body, in the sleep space, is beginning to transfer that information into the etheric body in the physical space. And so you're beginning to be able to have more awareness in that etheric body of what happens in your sleep space. It's really interesting because things change. When you function from the etheric body, similar to what we were talking about earlier about the ability to expand time and shrink time, you begin to have an understanding and a visceral grasp of what simultaneous time is and how to function in simultaneous time. And in that etheric body, as you begin to live in the physical world from that simultaneous etheric space, things like gravity absolute third dimensional fixed given, that's it, jump up in the air, you're going to come back down into the ground. Gravity works different in the etheric body. Jumping from one cloud to another cloud, not even an issue. But see, that's not the third dimension. That's this expanded fifth dimension, multi-dimensional space where you exist and have capacity that is beyond the third dimensional rules and structures. But see, what we do is, many will hear that. If I said that to the 50 people that live on the street I live in, they would all look at me like there's really something wrong. They cannot hear that no matter how the information is provided. Some of you may be sitting there, in fact, I'll guarantee it, even many of you in Mastering Alchemy, it's like, oh yeah, that will be really cool. Well, no, it's right now. It's available right now. It's not a will be someday, it's right now. And so the shift to be able to start to recognize this is right now, I can do this right now, is what is really required to step into this multidimensional new earth space. Not hard, but it's a shift from 3D transition into this 5D multidimensional reality. Not hard. It's just a matter of kind of recognizing I am not what they told me. I am not stupid, not attractive, etc., etc. Those are all how the third dimension works. It's not how the multidimension works. And you're a multidimensional being. So this is where this all plays out. You're big. You're not little. You're significant. You're important. And one of the things that is happening right now is you got a front row seat to the best theater in all that is. There are tremendous amount of beings, the archangelics, the lords of light, the creator beings, the ascended masters. I'm not talking about random beings that are caught in the earth plane after they die. I'm talking about the beings that you know intimately but forgotten. They're the ones that are sitting there with you right now.
I have two people here, Kellyanne and Diane, who both work with teenagers and millennials, and each of them independently said they see through the BS and it gives them hope.
Yep.
But you know what? We saw through the BS too.
Good point.
But we didn't have the permission or something to call it out.
Yeah. So I say this often to, the baby boomers, let's take that group of people, 78 million people born after 1944, 46. They've passed through a period of time creating what we now experience. Neither good or bad, all creation. And one of the things about an awful lot of the baby boomers, and I'm going to say you all particularly, whether you know it or not, you wouldn't be sitting on this call if you didn't participate here, is in the Atlantean period of time, and there's a lot that can be said about that, but in the Atlantean period of time, there was a dream. And the dream effectively is this new earth that we're talking about. Well-being. Simply everybody just existed in amplified opportunity and well-being and respect and dignity and kindness, and that's the world. And that dream in many baby boomers' space sits there, is held in that space. And the purpose was to be able to hold it. And you have. Congratulations, you've been successful. The millennials take the dream and basically begin to reenact it, put it into motion, make it happen. And the kids that are born after 2012, their job is to begin to structure it into that environment, environment of experiencing the experience of the dream. It's all working very well, except we're in transition and most people don't recognize that this is moving somewhere that's successful. This will happen. There is no failure in this experience. There's just people who choose to live in the third dimensional space and will argue for their limitations. And eventually they will say, I'm tired, and they will go home like everybody else is in the process of going home. You happen to be sitting on the front lines in a way that said, send me. I want to be there when this unfolds, and I want to contribute. And that's who you are. Whether you know it or not, that's who you are.
Jim, that might be a good stopping point for overtime.
We're never over time, we're just now. So I hope that was helpful. There's a lot more to this. And if there are some of you out there that are wanting to play here, this would be a good time to play here. This isn't a sales pitch, although $30 off if you... Did I do that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good, thanks. This is a time where major changes are unfolding, and you're going to see it all around you. You're going to see it as much in your face as the question about the mass murder or the acceptable. And yet, there they are right in front of you. You're going to see on a large world level events that are really going to be painful to watch. It's like, how could that happen? Painful. And yet, it's a transition. Those that play in the third dimension, arguing for the third dimension, they also are able to create faster than they've ever been able to create before. Those you playing in a fifth dimensional space, you're going to be getting what you experience and what you put your attention on faster than you've played before. The nature of time is changing, and it's basically becoming now. And so what you think now is what is being presented to you. The time lag of thinking an ugly thought and then having time to go, oh, I didn't really mean that. I really don't wish they were dead. That timeline is shrinking. And so what you think and what you create is what is where the timeline is collapsing. Collapsing isn't the right word, reshifting itself. So paying attention to your thoughts and recognizing whether you're binding it to an emotion or binding it to a feeling from the heart is going to be a conscious awareness that is going to get you the results that you're looking for. If you think from that third dimensional space, be really clear, you're going to get third dimensional actions and responses and results much sooner than you did previously. But in that fifth dimension, go to the gardens. You're going to see things that are unimaginable from where we're talking right here verbally. But you know all of these things. So, with that said, I hope this was helpful. Those of you who might be interested in level 2, level 1, these tools are very valuable. Whether we never see you again, you want to play with these tools. And some of you are thinking about level 2. We're going to start to shift level 2 into kind of an expanded space in and around this new earth. So with that said, thanks for playing. I enjoyed spending some time with you. Hope it was valuable. We appreciate you. Blessings.